Alright, so I just wanted to do a little how-to on driving an SMG car if you've never driven one before. Doesn't seem to be much info out there. So, an SMG car has a clutch. There's just no clutch pedal. The computer drives the slave cylinder to control the clutch engaging and disengaging. So, basically the computer does the work for you, and people are often nervous of this, and you hear horror stories about SMG failure. Myself personally, I think a lot of the failure in these is inexperienced drivers. I don't personally think you should drive an SMG car unless you have driven a manual 5-speed, if not 6-speed car, at least for a little while, so you understand the concept of shifting, letting off when you shift gears, and so on and so forth. The nice thing with SMG is if you're not used to driving it, you can kind of dial your transmission down to not be so aggressive on the clutch engagement and disengagement and the speed of it. So you can adjust this down or up. It's got 6 settings. 6 is very aggressive and very fast, so I wouldn't recommend that until, again, you've driven the car and felt it out. But these cars will shift very fast and very accordingly as to what you're doing with that pedal. I've driven many 6-speed cars, and I'm quite good at it, I like to say. So it took me a little while to get used to the computer doing the clutch thing, but it's actually very good. Having it for 5 years now, it's been great. No problems with my SMG pump as of yet. 200,000 kilometers. I did have a clutch disc fail last year, but 200,000, you really can't cry over stuff like that. So just give you an idea here how this works. So when you start the car up, as you see, there's no park. Your park brake is park. So you got neutral, reverse, and drive. Now myself, you can put this in drive mode and it'll do the shifting for you and all that. But if you're an experienced manual driver, you probably won't like the way this behaves. Myself, I find it tries to take off in second gear a lot of times when you roll up to a stop sign. Just little stuff like that. I mean, you know when you want to come onto the car. So these shifters, this one or this one, whichever you prefer to use, I like the paddles. As you see in the dash there, you can turn the shift or the speed of the clutch engagement up and down and how aggressive it is. So if you're just learning, turn it down and probably use the drive mode, but as you see right now it's in second. I don't like that. 7-speed car, it should take off in first gear. That's just my opinion. So I make sure that I'm always in first gear on takeoff. That reduces clutch wear, etc., etc. Better for the car. You'll feel it. I mean, if you're a car guy and you care about your machine, you drive one of these for a month and you'll have it figured out. Don't be scared of it just because it's an SMG BMW. Like the M5, for example, my car, this is very hard to find in a 6-speed manual. And you probably pay almost $10,000 more for it. And the SMG is actually faster in the long run. This car has 7 gears. And as soon as you touch your paddles, it'll immediately go into manual mode. What I really like about SMG is, like, there's automatics out there that you can shift your gears, but if you try to like do a burnout or you rev the gear too high, the computer overrides you and it'll shift itself. SMG won't do that. This thing, if you put it in first gear on them paddles and you want to do a rage and burnout, the computer won't say no to the transmission. It'll just pound off rev limiter until you tell it to shift. So again, I kind of like the SMG. I didn't think I would at first, obviously, a little bit skeptical being the first one I've ever owned, but I mean, pretty straightforward. What I would recommend, if one thing, like some standard drivers like to, when they take off, they kind of do the couple pumps on the pedal. I wouldn't recommend that with SMG. That kind of, if you got the transmission turned up and you do that too hard, you'll actually go into like a burnout mode where it'll free rev and dump the clutch at whatever RPM on your third pump that you shove it to. So like if you're in gear and you go whoomp whoomp, the next time you shove it, however hard you shove it, that's where it's going to dump the clutch up to, I think they'll go as high as 6,500 RPM on a clutch dump. Launch control. If you want to use launch control, you have to use the stick. You can't use the paddle shifter for whatever reason on the E60s, but you have to have this turned up all the way to number 6, as high as it'll go, and you hold forward on the shifter and you floor the gas pedal, and the car will sit, the American models will sit at 1500 RPM, and as soon as you release the shifter, that's your launch. That's when it bang and goes. So that's just a brief on how the launch control works. Again, if you're just learning to drive, don't use that stuff until you're comfortable with your car. So I got it somewhat warmed up. I'm just here in my driveway. I just want to show you. Again, on the takeoff, I would recommend just slow, steady on the pedal. And you'll actually, if you've driven a clutched car, a true standard, you will actually feel the computer riding the clutch and engaging like in first and reverse anyhow. And it's very smooth. The biggest thing is don't get carried away with that gas pedal, because if you quarter throttle it or whatever, 8th throttle, that's when you're going to get jumpiness in your takeoff. But I don't know how well you can hear it, but it's pretty amazing how they got technology to figure stuff like this out. I mean, it's impressive. And I don't know, my suggestion is I always let off when I do my shifts, even with the transmission turned up, even racing or whatever. I always lift off the pedal when I do my shift, same as you would with the standard. If you take a 6-speed car, when you shift from 4th to 5th, you don't leave your accelerator pedal on the floor. You let off so your motor doesn't free rev. Now this won't free rev, but if you leave your foot down and just bang these through the gears, you'll feel it in your drivetrain, and it's probably not good for it. I wouldn't suggest it. So again, this responds very well with what you do to that gas pedal. So you just drive this like a 6-speed car that doesn't have a clutch pedal, and shift your gears and step on the pedal when you want it to perform, and you're going to be happy. I don't think you're going to be not impressed. So that's my take on SMG. Not a lot of info on how to drive them, but if you've driven a standard, they're not a bad machine. Thanks.